Greetings, Craddock here. We're going to be going over the Rathma speed setup. If you're into dying to lacunis, wingeds, lickers, spirit throwers, elite first rifts, if you like slower moving builds with long ramp up times at the start, more button presses, terrain bugs, more terrain issues, targeting issues at range, targeting issues past Waller, less consistent clear times, then this just might be the build for you. On a more serious note, I do enjoy the single target DPS that this build offers. It has benefits greatly from a ton of pylons. In summary, it's one with a lot of quirky things that just nagging issues that just tend to stack up as you play it more and more. So not my favorite setup, but definitely one worth looking into just because it has so much potential. It's very much a glass cannon setup, so it's a little bit more min-maxy. So if you are a player that can perform very well, then this might be one to look into for sure. I do have a slightly edited setup I want to thank ahead of time Widicho, because I started using his planner and just slightly adapted it. So this is going to be very similar to his speed build. So I have made some modifications to this setup to make it a little bit more easy to use, not necessarily tougher, but higher cooldown, higher attack speed, these sort of things to make it more agreeable. So you can't really fit this build with additional attack speed because it is so important to keep the Captain Crimsons, the extra multipliers in the rings. The Fate's Vow obviously needs to be placed. The Justice set is a huge multiplier here as well. And then for this season, we are now going to run the new Funerary pick, which is going to increase our single target DPS or low density DPS considerably. Another factor that's going to allow us to just demolish the Rift Guardian even without Stricken. The braces are doubling our damage against our active commanded target. This is why it is important to command the correct target. Additionally, I think this is a great item to sanctify mid to high Paragons because it comes with a damage multiplier range that we can perfect. Earlier in season though, lower Paragons, you might want to just sanctify your weapon to max that out, get an easy primal-esque option. Note here I have opted for a more defensive passive as well, so there are little things that you can do to perhaps survive a little bit easier when you don't have as much toughness. Something with this build though I wanted to try is I noticed a pain point with resetting the Army of the Dead cooldown, which is like one of the major focuses of the Rathma set. The 2-piece, your minions reduce the cooldown of the Army of the Dead each time they deal damage. Unfortunately, more than half of your minions are revives, and depending on what mob set you're engaging, the revives could be slow moving attacking zombies, or they could be fast attacking, scavengers, wingeds, whatever, lacunis, nice mobs that engage targets quickly, right? So it's kind of RNG in that aspect. I can't control that really. What we can control though are command skeletons. These are consistent, you're always going to have them. What I opted for, I did test, going a higher breakpoint and maybe running like the extra recovery via the Dark Mending or the Freezing Grass for an extra Krysbin pock, but what I settled on was actually keeping the Frenzy rune, but running an even higher attack speed, lower FPA. Normally with this build you would hit 24 FPA with the skeletons. I opted to equip even more attack speed so that I could reset the cooldown on Land of the Dead more consistently, quickly. Just felt better because Land of the Dead is a large, massive pull, and you are so glass cannon with this setup. It protects you innately just to pull the monsters and keep them from attacking you, right? The quicker you can do this, the less often you will get hit, I found. So in that pursuit, we are running the Gogok of Swiftness in that third gem slot. Instead of a multiplier gem here, such as Bane of the Powerful, I felt the extra cooldown multiplier, attack speed for, again, hitting that attack speed breakpoint, and the dodge, just giving that percentage of chance to dodge helps out considerably with staying alive in this configuration. Also helps keep up your squirts because it is dodge. You're not going to keep up your squirts necessarily because we're not running any sort of shielding via the gizzard, right? But I did quite enjoy the squirts necklace. Sometimes you get lucky not getting hit anyway because it is sort of a mid-range build. And then the shield pylons, just amazing. This is a speed build, so shield pylons do come up often, and that's a nice little synergy there. Gives you double damage when you have a shield pylon, pretty much. So attack speed affixes to hit this breakpoint, weapon, both rings, the gloves, quad gloves, Enchantress, Paragon, and I think that with the Gogok, that does it. One of the cool things, though, that I did like here is because we're running such high attack speed, we are hitting a rather fast attacking tick rate on our Siphon Blood. This means the ramp up for the power shift stacks, that stacks up to 10, is quite quick, and you don't really have to maintain this at the 10 stack level the entire time. So when I was initially testing this build, I was running with standalone because getting back up after dying was so onerous and so much of a problem that I just wanted to mitigate it as much as possible. You get about 30% armor in that scenario, and that was enough for me to think about taking this passive, because this passive slot is so darn weak. There's like these passives are pretty good for the build, but every other option is kind of like, it might help us, but not really. So what I ended up settling on was Swift Harvesting, because this can actually give us that additional breakpoint, as I just said, and get us down to the 8 FPA, which is a little bit more helpful for stacking your power shift, getting a little bit more healing from that ability. However, there are a couple of other options here. The Rathma's Shield is high on the list, especially for that first rotation in the speed build here. Even though this has a limitation of once every 60 seconds, the beginning of the rift is one of the most difficult times. So the Rathma's Shield can fit in well here to giving you immunity in that start of the rift. Rigor Mortis would be my third pick, probably. It gives poison abilities slow. So this means that if you happen to not kill the enemies that you dislocate with your bone armor, they will get slowed and their attack speed reduced. So this can keep you safe as well. This is why it's a decent pick in my book. Another nicety with the setup was that I noticed the Sanctified power, which constantly assaults enemies, is apparently, seemingly, proccing the Gogok of Swiftness. So it helps keep the bonus up in the rift, and you don't have to actively command skeletons, even though it is a benefit to keep it commanded to take advantage of the Justness multiplier. You can slot cooldown instead of your elemental damage here. A higher base cooldown resets the Land of the Dead quicker. It means you don't require as many hits from your pets in the first place, so this means even faster resets as well. For this reason, we're running cooldown on our conventional elements here, and the Ring of Royal Grandeur if we're wearing that, versus the Krysbins, either or, right? Just tons of cooldown and attack speed to help reset as quick as possible. One of the big things that I enjoyed about this setup was any pylon you run into is a huge benefit to the build, because you're so squishy. That shield pylon, rather nice for keeping up the squirts, but also nice for keeping you alive. Speed pylon, because you move so slow through the rift, and to be honest, even though you run slow, because we have such high base cooldown, we are able to blood rush rather readily. So you are able to get through the rift, not at such a terrible pace. It just doesn't feel quick, you know what I'm saying? So Another mention for that cooldown is being able to stun more often. I mean, the dislocation comes off cooldown like that, so this 30-yard AoE stun that really fits in well with the conventional elements, is always able to be active, and you can even cast it just to stay alive as well. I found was really neat to use in that scenario. Other pylons that are useful, power conduit. We also have the channeling pylon, being able to cast instantly your Army of the Dead, always very nice. And so yeah, I did opt for potency to be able to stay alive. The only issue with this is you don't have corpses at the beginning of the rift, so it's quite difficult if you engage like a difficult mob type at the beginning because you have 0 multiplier. Your minions haven't hit enemies yet, so you don't have the damage reduction from the set as well. So getting those revives up as quick as possible. I did die a lot more often with this build than running the Trag'Oul Blood Nova in a speed setting, though I was surprised at how often I was able to stay alive after a good bit of practice with this configuration. That being said, though, you will give up more gem upgrades if you are running this composition. Overall, this build does clear a little bit faster, whereas the Trag'Oul Blood Nova Speed was somewhere between 3.5 minutes and 4.5 minutes. The Rathma build here is somewhere between 3 minutes flat and 4.5 minutes. So it's a wider range. You might be able to clear a rift insanely quickly if it's dense enough and has good pylons. But if it's like a lengthy rift with like dispersed pylons and completely spread out and you die a few times on top of that, it can take like 4.5 minutes for sure. Indeed, I did about 14 rifts and I averaged the times out and came exactly up to 3.75 minutes, so it was like dead even in between that range. So I'm pretty confident on this value here. I'm decent at the build, I'm not great. So what you're missing in the build is a little bit of recovery. It's very lacking in recovery actually. You're depending a lot on the Dark Reaping and the Grisly Tribute to help you there. You have to constantly command skeleton enemies, you have to press the revive every now and again, you're spamming your Army of the Dead, you're stunning enemies, and you are blood rushing around, and have to siphon your main targets as well. For these mid to high Paragons, you can start thinking about wearing your Krysbin sentence, definitely keeping the priority on maximizing your legendary affix. That's #1 priority. However, secondarily, if you have a well-rolled one that has attack speed, cooldown crit, or crit hit damage, this can give you a little bit extra advantage with that crit or crit hit damage as compared to wearing the Ring of Royal Grandeur and cubing the Krysbins as we were before. It is of benefit to spec out your follower with toughness so that you can place the gains access to all skills, get both the attack speed breakpoint via the focus mind and that second life passive. That double second life is going to be hugely beneficial. Note you can place the Guardian set on your follower with the Ring of Royal Grandeur, and this will greatly help increase their toughness. Anyways, that's all I have from this. Enjoy the gameplay, hope you have a good time, and yeah, catch you in the next one.